The following program is brought to you by the University of Alabama.
Suzanne Hudson has just published a volume of new and selected stories, All the Way to Memphis, and Joe Formichella has a new novel, Waffle House Rules, set in Baldwin County, Alabama. The couple are also deeply involved with the innovative volume, The Shoe Burnin', which contains fiction, nonfiction, and a CD of music and spoken word. And they are working to establish their home place, Waterhole Branch on Fish River, as a venue for literary and musical performances of all kinds. I spoke with Suzanne Hudson and Joe Formichella in the Fairhope Museum of History in Fairhope, Alabama. Well, Suzanne, Joe, nice to see you both.
Great to see you.
Good to see you, Dan.
In the past, you and I have done this show. You and I have done this show, but we three have not done it together. But you both have new books. You're both working for a new press. You're both involved with a bunch of literary, artistic endeavors out at Waterhole Branch, so we thought it'd be fun to talk about it together. But we can't do everything at once. Suzanne, you have a new book, All the Way to Memphis. Mm-hmm. I sat with your new book recently, and I read through it, and a lot of the stories I had read and known in the past, some I had not, but I was struck anew. A lot of your stories are violent, erotic, incestuous. They're stories of sexual assault and revenge.
Right?
I mean, there are people cutting, well, obviously there's a missing thumb. There are people, women kill men who have been mean to them. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on.
And some funny stuff.
And a lot, it is, yes, it is erotic,
Yes,
it is violent, erotic, incestuous humor that you have. And it just made me wonder all over again, you wrote the stories one at a time, and yet for many of them, there's a kind of consistency of tone. Mm-hmm. You're not a violent, vengeful person. Why do you suppose this series of stories came out in the way that they did?
I don't know. I've always, since the beginning, I've been sort of interested in the darker side of human nature.
Yeah.
It's more interesting than, happy little stories, I think. So it's just where my mind is. I don't know why.
Well, Opposable Thumbs was one of your very first stories. Mm-hmm. It has all of that. The story that won the prize, Lestrade? Leprade. That's the nadir of this whole enterprise, where she keeps her crazed father tied to a post. Is that? Am I remembering that right?
That's right.
Yeah.
And and he hides her baby with the Easter eggs.
Oh, it's wonderful.
Of course.
Every woman, that's too broad. A great many Southern women writers, if I ask them, what did you read? What made you the way you are? Either they tell me that they just wrote about what they saw around them, which in your case can't be true, because I can't imagine it. Or there were particular writers. Flannery O'Connor?
Absolutely. Flannery O'Connor, Eudora Welty, Carson McCullers, all of them. Those are the ones I read.
That stuff shows. But to make the turn, my favorite story, well, let's stay for one more minute with the title story, All the Way to Memphis. That is a little different. Your heroine, your protagonist, is such a buttoned up, tight lady. And yet she goes momentarily mad. What provokes her?
Well, her world has to be ordered and perfect for her to be able to survive. And so when her husband emotionally blows it up, then she just goes off the deep end because of lack of control over that.
Well, she's the woman who has the perfect nails, the perfect hair, perfect clothes, perfect shoes.
Perfect marriage.
Perfect marriage. But-
Not.
No, am I right? He has a secret homosexual internet affair, but not physical. It's not carnal. It's on the internet.
It's his army buddy that he goes on the fishing trip with every year.
So it is real. Well, on the fishing trip.
Yeah, once a year.
Right. Well, she can't stand that. And I like your hitchhiker too. The girl what's the
Calista. No, Calista's a librarian.
Yeah.
Savannah is the...
Savannah. Where does Savannah come from?
Well, she's the exact opposite. She's young, she's hyper, she's all over the map, and headed to strike out on an adventure, become a blues singer. They're sort of at different points in their lives, so I thought they would be interesting to interact together.
And they do. I think maybe Savannah convinces the librarian to go home and face the music.
Maybe, you don't really know.
No, I don't. No.
So you can end it however you like.
I'd like to think that she drives off into the American
And I like
West
to think
and
that
escapes.
her husband is back alive, just like she wishes him to be.
Yeah, he's not though. He's dead. I just hope she escapes. I'll tell you straight out, my favorite story, maybe not the very newest one, but my favorite in the volume is The Seamstress. And I'll tell you why. It looks like you're going to move in a new direction. That is a story about Mardi Gras. It's a story, something you haven't, a lot of your characters up until now have been, to say, if not redneck, at least working class. Pretty rough characters, a lot of them. But that story is about middle and upper middle class people and the conflict between them. Do you think of that as a new direction for yourself?
Well, it's still in the territory of revenge, though not
It
violent.
is, it
not
is.
violent, and was inspired by an actual. The only time I ever went to a Mardi Gras tableau, it actually happened that the woman was dancing and tripped on her gown, and that inspired the story. That I thought, well,
Yeah.
this seamstress is going to take revenge by rigging it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but the real one you saw, it was not a sabotage.
No,
Probably just clumsiness.
clumsy.
No, I thought it was, that story struck me as one of the most perceptive and nuanced of your stories, because the seamstress, who is really upper class, really a plantation girl, keeps it a secret, and the reader learns it bit by bit by bit. I think a lot of that story. And I don't give advice usually. Well, that's not true. I don't charge for this advice, but I think that would be, a fruitful direction to go in. Joe, you have a new novel, and it seems to encompass a lot of your concerns. One of which is the testing of blood, and because you work in a
I do. I work in a
hematology
hospital, yeah.
lab,
Yeah.
and a kind of existential problem. All right. It takes place in a Waffle House, a lot of it.
Right.
Why?
Well, it became interesting to me. I had a couple of story ideas, right, that I was bouncing around. One was the idea about the boy being orphaned, all at once on a Halloween night. Another was the idea of this supposedly cursed class that kept losing people. And I wanted to collide those lives and see what would happen. And it occurred to me that a Waffle House is a pretty, at least accessible place to go and see how lives that otherwise might not ever collide, for 45 minutes or so, that you could sit and watch and just let it incubate for a while. That and the one of the one of the true things in the book, that sign that causes so much trouble, the no truck sign, I actually saw that at a Waffle House one time, and you know, forever after, I've wondered what could that possibly mean.
Fish trap?
No trucks, fish
No,
traps.
Fish traps.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we find out pretty quick in that book.
Yeah. Well, what it's supposed to convey, but I still don't have any idea what the actual meaning was behind whoever printed those letters on there, what they had in mind.
If you drive in, you can't drive out.
Drive out. That's right.
That's the point of the fish trap, I think. The Waffle House, you know, if I were assigning students to write a term paper about your novel, I would ask them to explain it. Or if I had been assigned, I'd say that Waffle House, since this is not Italy and we don't have piazzas,
Right.
it's the public gathering place where all the people named Phil gather and sit around this table day after day.
Yeah, well, that was one of the things. You know, I mean, the whole, you know, when you go back and you research the history of the Waffle House, I mean, that was the original impetus to a place where people can gather any time during the day, and they can order off a menu that goes across any kind of meal, because we're open all day long and we never know what they're going to want. And there's something very attractive and intriguing about that being a business model, you know, versus, you know, breakfast stops at 10:30. Like anyone who gets up
Sure.
at 11 o'clock doesn't want a cup of coffee and a piece of bacon. Waffle House said, no, it doesn't matter. We got a menu. It's not huge. It's not, you know, luxuriant, but whatever's on there you can get anytime you want it. And so they that to me says that they attract a different kind of customer class, that you're more likely to get a really interesting mix of people.
Yeah, one of the things that seem to attract is the retired class.
Right.
Old guys who go in there and drink coffee for hours and hours. On the serious side, it's a funny book. It's got a lot of, I mean, aside from all the children dying, which is
Aside from the dead bodies, yeah.
not so
yeah.
funny, that I read it as a fairly sophisticated study, crazily enough, of a kind of existentialism. The novel, your novel, whether you know this or not, your novel has a lot to do with how people perceive time and how people perceive life and death. In the novel, there's no, that your little boy Jimmy has no sense of the future. He could be Jean-Paul Sartre.
Right.
He lives entirely in the absolutely present moment.
Well, that was one of the you know, I'm a big fan of John Irving, right? And he has said in many interviews his books always start off with what if. And he asked himself a simple question, and that was the what if thing for this book. Was what if there were a child whose life pretty much from beginning to end was one of comprehensive and continuous tragedy. He just could not escape it. What are the different ways he could react? And that, you know, that's how Jimmy Ryan developed over time. Just kept pushing that question. And when you push that question, right, there's no truth, right? The reason, another reason to put it in a Waffle House is, you know, death is not certain, right? And despite that cliche, it's the only thing left that we really don't know much about, except that it's going to happen. I mean, and a Waffle House is actually more certain than death, right? So
Okay.
they went together well, and so explore that, you know, the whole idea of the golden hour, right? You got 60 minutes to snatch a life back from death.
Well, their novel moves in the direction of EMTs and
Right.
ambulances
Right.
and resuscitation.
Well, that's all true history. That guy up in Maryland that revolutionized emergency room care and triage and came up with the theory of the golden hour. I mean, in the course of, you know, turnover of a clock from when he instituted those procedures and policies, they started saving, 10 times more lives than they were just the day before, just because of that theory. Don't look at the broken bones sticking through the skin. Don't worry about the puddles of blood on the floor. Treat the shock, right? That was the one thing he's just screamed over and over and over again as he was teaching these students. And he was right. He was absolutely right. He saved lives.
You have both been involved. You were the editor of The Shoe Burnin'.
Mm-hmm.
You're in The Shoe Burnin'. The Shoe Burnin' is an ongoing book, CD, project. Suzanne, how did this thing get going?
Well,
the people have never heard of it. What is The Shoe Burnin'? What is that object?
The original Shoe Burning was back in the 70s, outside of Bruton, Alabama, at a good old boy's cabin. And he told us to come over and bring shoes. And then he also pulled a big box of shoes out into the living room because it was cold. He had a fire going, and it was too cold for him to go get wood outside. So we just started pitching shoes in, and we started making up stories about the shoes.
Right.
What it went through in life, and then it became around 2000, I guess. It became an annual event out at Waterhole Branch where you bring your shoes and tell your stories.
And the shoe. You throw the shoe into the
Throw
fire.
the shoe into the fire and let those memories go, or whatever.
There might have been adult beverages involved.
Probably.
Sure. Why not? Of course.
And then we were kind of merging with a group of singer-songwriter musicians, and it became a project where we were going to do an anthology of shoe stories,
Right.
and a music CD to complement the stories.
And the songs are also
Shoe songs.
stories about shoes in one fashion or another. So when a person buys the book, in the back of the book, there's a CD.
Produced by a Grammy winner, no less. So it's very well done.
All the musicians are
It's a great
very
CD.
established, very sophisticated people. Does it work? Is this project? I mean, I know that you don't own River's Edge, but does it work?
Yeah.
People buying the book with the CD.
I mean, the thing about River's Edge is a lot of those guys were ongoing and very successful marketing folks. So that for reasons that will not make any sense to anyone who knows publishing, wanted to get into publishing, and their entrance in was the publishing industry is the worst business model we've ever seen. Can we flip that on its head? And so a lot of their decisions are based on not repeating the same mistakes of what's taken as normal behavior in publishing business.
Give me a couple of examples. What are the things that publishers have been doing that now would be viewed as wrong, a failure to be avoided?
Well, the worst thing they do is the whole relationship starts off as an antagonistic relationship. They throw a bunch of money at the author. They throw a bunch of money at this huge print run. They throw a bunch of money at storage and distribution. And then it's incumbent upon the author to earn enough of that money back by selling books so that the publisher will feel like it's worth their while. And the vast majority of authors don't ever earn out their original contract, and they dump them. They're not going to take a chance on a second book, and that spoils that author, their reputation. I mean, it just poisons the water from the very beginning. So River's Edge said, why do they do that instead of saying let's partner with an author in an individualized kind of way, because we know how to do these customized things. It's not boilerplate marketing, it's not boilerplate publicity. We know how to do things in a customizable way. Let's partner with an author, about their writing and their particular project, and let's see if we can put together a package that makes everybody happy and want to continue forward, so that we can keep doing what we do well, which is marketing, and you can keep doing what you do well, which is writing. That's their approach. So that right there, the way they enter into the relationship is vastly different than anything we've been used to.
So this is a brand new publishing house that has been in existence. How many books are out now? 5, 6?
They're
Something like
getting
that?
ready to come out with number 6 and 7.
Right.
And the first one came out about 54 weeks ago.
Oh, more or less 54. Good. That's
So I mean, that, which is to say, that's you know, as you get into the weeds of what's different about them, they're it's not going to be the case where from the day you signed a contract with any other publisher we've worked with, if you see your book in 18 months, you're lucky, right? Mm-hmm. That's completely different, right? They've done 7 books, and
they've got a lot more on the way, and they're also reissuing my 2 novels, In a Temple of Trees, In the Dark of the Moon, and Joe's books from McAdam Cage. They got rights back to all of those, so there's a lot going on.
Yeah. Now, McAdam Cage was a very writer-friendly house, and David Poindexter, who owned it, ran it, I mean, could not have been more amiable, could not have been more supportive.
Oh, no, it was fun. It was a fun ride.
And they failed. Mm-hmm. So now we have to move forward and hope that, you know, if you have enough resources, you can make it. You have the actual site of the Shoe Burnin' is where you live, mm-hmm. the Waterhole Branch, and you're there. You live there. You have your book launchings there. For people, what goes on there? What have you done? I'm starting to think of it as a kind of a writer's colony or a venue more than just a place where you live. What have you done there?
It's it's a good place for artists and musicians. We have several of them out there who live on 6 acres, 3 houses, and we've built a little stage out there so the musicians have a place to perform, and we have book launches there, and we kind of meld and merge the music and the literary worlds together.
Right. There's not another book though with a CD in it. Just the first. Not yet. So you have a stage.
There's talk of a guitar-shaped pier though, because it's on a branch of Fish River there.
Right. Obviously, a stage is good for musicians. Are you having literary events, readings, signings, that kind of thing?
We do that mostly during the spring and fall, but
right. Well, the whole notion of the words and music communicating within one package kind of really struck a chord when we debuted the Shoe Burnin' in Louisiana a year ago. And so the launches and the shows continue. We did a Shoe Burnin' show up in Virginia a couple of months ago.
Going to Key West.
We kind of meld that with the book launch too, so that there will be music, and that has actually morphed into something more like a show, like a scripted show, than just music, readings, music. Because that seems to really strike a chord with people. And I know that the authors who have so far been on a stage for one of these shows, I know that they all have said, I never want to do another signing again, where I sit there for 2 hours in a bookstore and people hurt themselves trying not to make eye contact. Because it's just so much more. There's so much more energy, and you know, the spectrum of artistic expression and the you know the family sense that you get up on the stage with all those different people. I mean, it's one of the things that people noticed about Waterhole Branch. I don't know if I could say why, but they noticed. You come out there and it's stunningly beautiful for one, in a real almost Gothic kind of way, with the
should be good for your stories.
Perfect for Suzanne, and it's quiet and people come out and they get work done, and so it was okay. Well, why don't we try to bottle that in a sense and headquarter these endeavors from here. And everybody seems to agree so far that, yeah, that's a good idea.
And are there annual bonfires?
Oh, yeah.
And what is the?
Typically the Saturday after Thanksgiving, which is not so good for football fans, but
That's
we do it anyway.
You must separate the sheep from the goats. You must. Actually, you used to separate the sheep from the goats.
Yeah,
Now it's all you-verse. There are no more goats.
2 weeks is the next one.
Right.
And there's only one rule on Waterhole Branch. You just
Be
have to
nice.
be nice.
Oh,
That's it.
I can do that. But you're both writers. There may be entertaining and interest in publishing and editing and so on, but you're both writing. What are you going to write next? What are you working on?
I have a manuscript that's actually a comic novel. It's not really dark and twisted.
Good.
Called The Fall of the Nixon Administration.
Oh, something.
about the Nixon
Not
administration.
about. And it's not about the chickens either.
It is about.
It is about the chickens. I remember the story quite well. And Joe, what are you doing now?
I've got a manuscript circulating that started with one of those what-if questions and quickly got, over my head in conspiracy theories that were a lot of fun to research and kind of poke at and just let them run wild and see what happens. So it's
Give me one of the theories. This is more than UFOs, right?
No, one of the well, I mean it has spawned theories, but one of the end time requirements is that a red heifer has to be grown, and then at the age of 3 has to be sacrificed so that the rabbis can re-enter the rebuilt Temple on the Mount so that they can sanctify it, so that all the dominoes that have to happen before the second coming can happen. And there are actual people and there are theories about people around the world trying to engineer this red heifer that they failed to do for about 1,000 years.
The red heifer. Well, okay. Well, I'm looking forward to it. The comic and the sublime.
It's insane.
Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.